Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today on replacing the FFIEC CAT, a guide to cybersecurity frameworks. My name is Alyssa Pugh, and I am pleased to be joined today by my colleague and friend, Savannah Richardson. So we have been living and breathing cybersecurity frameworks for the last several months. So we are excited to be here with you today and share a little bit about what we know. Just a quick disclaimer before we get into it, this presentation is for information only. It does contain our own opinions and it is proprietary. A few housekeeping items. This session does have audio and video. If all you can see is the PowerPoint, well then you will still get the same great information, just not our faces. At the end of the session, if you give us your feedback, you might just win a $25 Amazon gift card. The slides, recording, and certificate of attendance will be sent to you via email after the session. And finally, please interact with us today. Go ahead and use that questions panel and go to webinar. I will say we do have over 1,000 people registered, so we will get to as many questions as we can. This webinar is hosted by Tandem, a governance, risk management, and compliance application by Conetrix. We help businesses like yours manage and improve their security and resilience with our suite of web applications for business continuity planning, vendor management, incident management, and, of course, cybersecurity assessment. So enough about us. We would love to get to know you. We have a few poll questions during our time today, and we'd love for you to participate. And I know everybody else on the call would too. Learning is best when we can learn from each other. So up first, I'm going to find my mouse, and then I'm going to launch this poll question for you. It says, what type of organization do you currently work for? And our answer options here are bank, credit union, other financial institution, third-party service provider, and other. And if you choose other, go ahead and leave us a comment. Tell us where you're from. All right, we are just at about 70% voted, so I'm going to close those results and share them with you. 71% of our attendees today are banks, so that is a lot of banks. 20% is credit union, and then on down from there. So that is about what we'd expect. So thank you guys so much for sharing. I am going to change my slide now and go on to our next poll question, which is, what is your organization's asset size? So I'm going to launch that here. And our options are less than 250 million, 250 to 500 million, 500 million to $1 billion, 1 billion to 5 billion, and more than 5 billion. And it looks like we have one question coming through about not seeing the poll questions. So if you don't see the poll questions, feel free to type your answer and let us know. All right, we have about 70% voted, and I'm going to share those results with you too. So about 30% are in the 1 billion to 5 billion range, 23% are in the 250 to 500, 22% are in the 250, and then on out from there. So we've got a lot of people, lots of different asset sizes here today. So should make for some really good questions and really good discussion. So we are so happy you all are here. Okay, here is the plan for today. We are going to start with a brief background. So how did we get here? Then we'll provide some overviews of the frameworks for you with some compare and contrast. We will answer the big question, how can I pick a cybersecurity framework? Because I know that's the one in all of our minds right now. We'll do a demo of Tandem Cybersecurity Assessment and all of the neat things we've been working on, and we'll wrap up with a great free resource for you. Sound good? I hope so. Let's dive in.
All right. I am so excited about this.
Me too.
And so let's jump off with the background. So the FFIEC Cybersecurity Assessment Tool, the CAT, has been a go-to resource to financial institutions for nearly a decade. But like all good things, flip phones, MySpace, and unlimited free checked bags, it's reached the end of its era. So let's take a quick walk down memory lane. Starting with February 2013, it all started with the Executive Order 13636, calling for stronger cybersecurity across critical infrastructure, including financial institutions. On June 2015, the FFIEC launched the CAT, giving financial institutions a structured way to measure cybersecurity maturity. On October 2016, the FAQ dropped to help clarify how to use the CAT. May 2017, version 1.1 came out, but it was a minor update, and cyber threats were continuing to evolve. August 2019, the FFIEC released additional guidance to support a more standardized approach. But after that, things went quiet. The CAT hasn't been updated since 2017, and over time, it became clear that it wasn't keeping up with the pace of today's cybersecurity challenges. So this brings us to August 2024, the sunset statement.
Dun, dun, dun.
I know what I said. Yes. So the FFIEC has officially announced the retirement of the CAT. This is why we're all here today. And before we go any further, let's just take a moment of silence to honor its service. I'm just kidding. We do not have time for that. So let's just keep going. Here's what their statement says in plain language. The CAT will be retired on August 31st, 2025. After that, it will be removed from the FFIEC website and it won't be maintained anymore. So if you've been relying on it, now's the time to start planning your next move. But the NCUA will still use the ACET for credit union exams. That tool is based on the CAT, so if you're a credit union, this news doesn't mean a sudden change. But for everyone else, the FFIEC is encouraging institutions to explore more current and flexible options, and they've pointed to a few solid options for you. You have the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 and CISA Cybersecurity Performance Goals. They also mentioned some industry-developed tools worth considering. You have the CRI Cyber Profile and the CIS Critical Security Controls. Now, just to be clear, the FFIEC isn't saying you have to use any specific framework. They're encouraging institutions to choose a framework that fits their size, risk profile, and overall security needs. So naturally, the next question is, which one should you choose? We'll take a look at some of those options.
Yeah. We will. In fact, we're going to look at all 4 of those options and then some a little bit today. So now that we know exactly where we are, let's talk about where we're going. What exactly are these frameworks that the FFIEC mentioned in their sunset statement? And before we get into that, though, I do want to go ahead and ask you, what frameworks are you considering? So I'm going to launch that poll here. And our answer options are NIST Cybersecurity Framework, CISA Cybersecurity Performance Goals, CRI Profile, CIS Controls, and other. And if you choose that other option, go ahead and leave a comment. I will say this is select all that apply, so feel free to choose multiple. And I will also ask that if you have a preference for one of these frameworks over another, go ahead and leave us a comment to let us know what you're thinking on that too. All right, the results are trickling in a little bit slower here. One of the questions that just came through is, are the comments meant to be turned off? No, we would love to see you chat with us. So thank you for asking, Caleb. All right, I'm going to close that and share those results with you all. And about 3/4 of our attendees today said the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. And then that's really interesting. About a quarter each said the other 3. So that is really interesting to see. And that tracks, and more on that in a little bit. So I'm going to hide those results and keep going here. So this isn't going to be a big surprise after that poll question and after what I said just a minute ago, but we are going to talk through each of these frameworks and give you some details about what they are, what they say, and most importantly, what makes them different from each other. And I'm going to kick things off by giving you an overview of the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, or CSF as we've all come to know it. This framework was created by NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They are a government agency and they are part of the Department of Commerce. The NIST CSF was originally published in February 2014 and most recently got updated last February. The CSF was created and published in response to that executive order Savannah mentioned just a couple minutes ago, which was about improving critical infrastructure sectors in cybersecurity. So, even though the NIST CSF was created for critical infrastructure sectors, the financial institutions are part of those sectors. Spoiler alert, we're going to have some comparisons in just a second here. So since financial sectors are part of critical infrastructure, that makes the CSF a good viable option for you. And if I was to describe the NIST CSF in terms of a Bluebell ice cream flavor, because ice cream makes not fun stuff more fun, it would be homemade vanilla. Now, I know Bluebell ice cream is really a Texas thing, so if y'all don't live in Texas, I should say that a little clearer. If y'all don't live in Texas, you're you're going to have to use your imagination on these flavors and then try some next time you visit. Homemade vanilla, though, it's a classic. It's widely recognized and it forms the foundation for several other flavors. Some things that set the NIST CSF apart from the other frameworks. First and foremost, I do want to mention this function wheel. Even if you're not overly familiar with the CSF, you are likely familiar with this visual of some sort. At the very least, you're familiar with the functions of govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. In some form or fashion, these functions have been adopted by each of the other three frameworks we're looking at today, which puts the NIST CSF at the heart of so many frameworks. Now, the CAT was mapped to NIST. The OCC's cybersecurity exam program is based on the CSF. So as far as frameworks go, these functions really make the CSF the Rosetta Stone or the gold standard of frameworks. Something that makes the CSF unique, though, is that it emphasizes outcomes. So instead of listing specific controls to implement, the CSF lists something that would be a good idea to do. For example, this one here says backups of data are created, protected, maintained, and tested. NIST doesn't tell you exactly how to do that, but it does paint done. You know you're successful when you can show that your data backups are created, protected, maintained, and tested. And this is really nice for people who like some flexibility in their work. That said, there's always a disclaimer, right?
Yes.
Flexibility and ambiguity are two sides of the same coin, and NIST understands this. So in version 2.0 of the CSF, they've added additional informal implementation standards to show what the outcomes might look like in practice. A mistake that we've seen is some people presuming that these examples are the CSF itself. So to be clear, these examples are helpful resources, but they are not the CSF. So while they're useful and you can use them to help you decide, am I achieving this or not, the focus that you are really assessing is the outcome, not the examples. So use these examples as guidance, but don't make them your goal. So that is the NIST CSF in a vanilla bean pod. And up next, I'm going to pass it back to Savannah.
Okay, next we'll be talking about the CISA Cybersecurity Performance Goals. They're also known as the CPGs. So the CPGs were created by CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. They're also a government agency and are part of the Department of Homeland Security. The CPGs were originally published in October 2022 and were recently updated in February 2023. They were published in response to a July 2021 National Security Memorandum from the White House on, surprise, surprise, improving critical infrastructure security. So if the CISA CPGs were a bluebell flavor, they'd probably be the chocolate brownie truffle. It's the newest flavor. It sounds nice. It has a lot of promise, but it's untested. And I don't personally know anybody who's tried it yet. So I guess we'll see. I did see a comment that mentioned that they just got bluebell in their town last year. Yeah, congratulations. I'm so happy for you.
Year for you guys.
Yes. All right, back to the CPGs. So there's three things the CPGs do really well. First, it's simplicity. The CPGs are designed to be straightforward and accessible, unlike some cybersecurity frameworks that require deep technical expertise. The CPGs break things down into clear, actionable steps, making them easier to understand and implement even for organizations with limited cybersecurity resources. They also have built-in consulting. Each security practice within the CPGs includes a built-in evaluation of cost, impact, and complexity. Oh, sorry for having. Yes, so anyway, this means you don't have to guess how difficult or expensive a recommendation might be. It's already outlined for you. I love that for you. We also have helpful guidance. Oh, sorry, we're losing our mouse over here. So sorry. So yes, it also has helpful guidance. The CPGs go beyond just telling you what to do. They also tell you how to do it. Each goal comes with specific instructions, recommended actions, and links to external resources, helping you implement security controls effectively without having to hunt down additional guidance. So are the CPGs the chocolate brownie truffle of cybersecurity? Maybe. They've got solid ingredients, but time will tell if they're a new favorite or just a limited time special. So the FFIEC statement also mentioned the CISA sector-specific goals, or SSGs. These build on the broader CPGs, but take it a step further by focusing on the unique risks and requirements within specific critical infrastructure sectors. So far, the SSGs have been released for areas like the chemical sector, energy sector, healthcare, and information technology. But what about financial institutions? Well, we're still waiting. The financial services SSGs are currently in development, and CISA's website says they are expected to be released in winter 2025.
Okay, up next, we are going to talk about the CRI Profile. So this framework is authored by the Cyber Risk Institute, or CRI, and they are a nonprofit organization. The CRI Profile used to be known as the FSSCC Cybersecurity Profile, and all the acronyms today, guys, yes, they are for real. The FSSCC is the Financial Services Sector Coordinating Council, which is a public-private partnership between the federal government, financial industry advocacy groups, and a number of large financial institutions. The CRI Profile was originally published in 2018, and it was last updated in February 2024, alongside the release of the NIST CSF 2.0. The profile was originally published and promoted as an alternative to the FFIEC CAT, so it really evolved out of industry cybersecurity needs. And because of that, their target audience was and continues to be financial institutions, and more specifically, larger financial institutions. If the CRI Profile was a Bluebell flavor, it would probably be the Dr. Pepper float flavor. It was created with a very specific purpose and a very targeted audience in mind, which we will be diving into more in the next couple of slides. And I'd like to start with a few things that set the CRI Profile apart. The first is that the profile uses very detailed diagnostic statements. These are often sentences and sometimes paragraph-long descriptions of what a control should look like if it's been implemented correctly. So I'm not going to read the screenshot to you, but if you're looking for more tailored guidance on what exactly you need to do to implement a control, the CRI Profile is very clear with that. In that same thread, I do want to mention the CRI Profile's extended emphasis. So the CRI Profile goes beyond the other frameworks pretty significantly into other areas like third-party risk management. So think due diligence, think contracts, monitoring, things like that. While the other frameworks tend to kind of dance around vendor management, the CRI Profile does dive deep. The last thing I want to mention is that the CRI Profile does have a tiering system built into their spreadsheet. Some might call this a risk assessment component, which is honestly a bit of a stretch. We've had a few questions about this feature because on the surface, it seems really important to do. For our audience today, though, based on those poll questions we asked at the start, I'm going to save you all a lot of time. If you work for a small to regional community financial institution, you're going to be tier 4. If a cyber attack at your bank or credit union could bring down the financial sector, the nation, or the world, then you might want to consider doing the tiering assessment. Otherwise, I would not spend too much brain energy or time on those tiers. Sitting with those tiers for a second, tier 4 is really what the CRI Profile considers to be a cybersecurity baseline. But in reality, some of those expectations are pretty advanced, which is why we said earlier on that their target was really larger financial institutions. For example, this first one that I'm going to pull up is about incident response for third parties. Some of these items go beyond common practice, even for critical vendors, like jointly maintaining a BCP, spelling out forensic investigation responsibilities, which is largely a cyber insurance thing for smaller organizations, and identifying single points of failure during BCP tests and exercises. So on the surface, all of these things are great ideas, but truly, how often are we going that deep? The second one is about threat intelligence gathering. In my experience, again, just due to resource limitations, smaller institutions tend to be more reactive in this area. I don't see much soliciting of threat intelligence, and I personally haven't heard of anyone asking their utility providers for threat intel. So if that's something that you do, go ahead and drop me a note in the chat. I would love to visit with you and learn more about that process. And lastly, least functionality. So this is a concept from the NIST Special Publication 800-53 controls. And while it's important, it's honestly a very high cost, high impact posture to adopt institution-wide on every system. So why do I share this with you? Well, I share it to make the point that while the CRI profile is built for financial institutions, security means something different to a small community bank than it does to a large systemically important bank, right? All of these practices are beneficial, yes. But I think that these baseline items, and this is just a sampling of them, all of these baseline items really show the nitty-gritty detail the CRI profile gets into. So if that level of depth works for you, then it could be a good fit.
All right, and now we have the CIS Critical Security Controls. The last of the key frameworks is the Center for Internet Security Controls. The framework is managed by the Center for Internet Security. Keep in mind that this is not the same as CISA. For those of you who have been around the block a couple of times, you might know its former name, the SANS Top 20 or the Consensus Audit Guidelines before that. While people tend to think of the NIST CSF as the gold standard, the CIS controls are the real OG. They were originally published in February 2009, and they are the most frequently updated framework out there. Version 8.1 was released in June last year. Its original purpose was to help military contractors stop getting breached. If the CIS controls were a Bluebell flavor, they'd probably be Rocky Road. Lots of rich ingredients, hearty and practical, and a crowd favorite for those tough days. All right, so going on with that theme of 3 things that these frameworks do really well, the CIS controls first has the implementation groups. Not every organization has the same cybersecurity needs, so CIS controls are broken into 3 implementation groups, or IGs. Think of these like tiers for your maturity level. You have IG1 is the starting point for smaller, less complex institutions. IG2 adds more controls for moderate risk, and IG3 is for higher risk organizations with more regulatory pressure. The great thing about this model is you don't have to tackle everything at once. You can start where you are and scale as your risk and your resources grow. It's widely adopted. The CIS controls are one of the most commonly used cybersecurity frameworks trusted across industries, including financial institutions. Their prescriptive, easy to follow format makes them an attractive choice for organizations looking for a clear roadmap to security. And lastly, they're highly supported. CIS regularly updates its framework, now at version 8.1, like we mentioned before, to keep up with evolving threats. With strong community backing, extensive benchmarking tools, and direct mappings to frameworks like NIST and CPGs, CIS controls come with plenty of resources to simplify adoption. Which brings me to an FAQ that I really wanted to answer. Do I have to use one of these 4 frameworks as a replacement for the FFIEC CAT? My answer for you is not necessarily. And just to read this here for Lily's purposes, the FFIEC encourages a standardized approach to assessing cybersecurity preparedness. While the sunset listed 4 possible options for this, supervised financial institutions may also consider use of industry-developed resources, as long as the frameworks support the effective control environment. Support an effective control environment and are commensurate with the institution's risk. Government wording, am I right? I'm out of breath after reading that one. Okay, so
Good
the
job.
question, thank you. Do you have to? No. Are there better options out there? Maybe. What are those other options? I'm so glad you asked. There are actually a truckload of cybersecurity frameworks you can use. In fact, you might want to consider adding some of these to supplement whatever framework you use. For example, each of the federal agencies has their own cybersecurity or information security examination work program. While these aren't technically cybersecurity frameworks, they also are. We're also seeing an emergence of threat-specific cybersecurity frameworks like the CSBS Ransomware Self-Assessment Tool or the CISA Ransomware Readiness Assessment. Some states are also releasing cybersecurity frameworks. For example, there's the Texas Cybersecurity Framework. And honestly, that would be the Dr. Pepper float of frameworks.
It's true.
There are frameworks created for new technologies like AI, and excuse all the acronyms I'm about to drop on you, but there are frameworks created by other federal agencies like the DOE C2M2 and the DoD CMMC. There are also industry-led and developed frameworks like COBIT, ISO, MPCI, DSS. And that's just scratching the surface. There are 1,000,001 frameworks out there. I say it metaphorically, but I also kind of mean it literally. Odds are you're already probably doing cybersecurity, the other cybersecurity assessments, and you may just not know it yet. Or maybe you do. This leads us to our next poll question, which is, how many cybersecurity frameworks are you currently using? Our answer choices are 0, 1, 2 to 3, 4 to 5, 6 or more.
All right. We are getting some people voting here. And we'll give it just a couple seconds more for you guys to go ahead and count on your fingers how many frameworks you're using. Okay, I'm going to close that and share those results. And it looks like 50% are using 1 and 45% are using 2 to 3. So 1 to 3 frameworks is what we're seeing right now.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So our key takeaway for today, there are a lot of great cybersecurity frameworks out there. Whichever you choose, you're taking a step in the right direction. We also want to take the time for you guys to submit your questions, and we'll take a look at some.
And there have been a ton of questions coming through. So thank you guys for submitting those. Go ahead and keep sending them through. And some of you guys are just being really nice. So thank you for the feedback and for engaging with us. And I was corrected. I said y'all, and I should have said all y'all. So thank you for that clarification, Carrie. I really do appreciate it. So one of the questions that came through was, can we use the CAT one more time this year before the sunset, or should we be switching to a new framework? That's actually something we're going to get to in just a few minutes, so stay tuned and stick with us. We also had a question that is, will the slides be available? And yes, we will be making the slides available after the session. So thank you for asking that as well. One of the questions is, do we have any sense about what the regulators might be favoring? That's a really good question, Ed. Do you have any thoughts on that, or do you want me to take that one?
I mean, the only thing I can think of is, and again, it's not really, they're not, or the recommendations, but not a specific framework. So the only things that I can list are the sunset statement from the FFIEC. But I don't know, do you have any answer?
Good question. I think that it depends on who you ask, right? So if you're wondering what your regulators might prefer, go ahead and start up that conversation with them. But we've been hearing different answers depending on who we ask in the industry. So there's not really a clear winner. I do think that there is some divide between NIST CSF is obviously a crowd favorite and it's been around for forever, but also some other examiners and regulators like other frameworks for their other benefits too. So my advice on that would be ask your regulator. Lots of questions about Tandem. So I'm just going to say stay tuned. We're going to get to that in just a little bit. So, okay, we've got a couple more questions. If you pick NIST CSF and later want to go to CRI, that's a question for Tandem. Can your product migrate current responses? We do have plans to have some mapping features. So stay tuned for that. We will show you that as well. So, is there an acronym dictionary? Oh man, I wish there was, Joe.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that is a great idea. We should create one. One last question, and then we will move on for now. Is there a framework best suited for financial institutions? Savannah, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I know there are some created specifically for financial institutions, like we just looked at the CRI profile, but we're about to step into which frameworks like best suit you. And I think the answer would be, it really depends on your size and complexity of for your institution. So if you want to know more about that, we'll be covering that in just a moment.
All right, so the answer to all your questions is stay tuned. Yeah, we love that. Thank you. Thank you for asking, though. We definitely want to keep engaging with you, so keep asking those questions and keep submitting them. So now we want to walk through a few comparisons. What are you getting into with each framework? And to answer that question, I want to show you how the 4 frameworks mentioned in the sunset statement really compare on 3 key topics: training, authentication, and encryption. So let's start with a simple control of training and look at what each of the 4 frameworks says you need to do to achieve that goal. I'm going to try to say achieve. I might say comply. When I say comply, I mean comply with the framework, not the general compliance. So achieve that control though. Starting with the NIST CSF, it has 2 outcomes. They want all personnel to be provided security awareness training and be mindful of security risks. And then they want specialized roles to receive specialized training. So the NIST CSF is pretty straightforward in what it expects. The CISA CPGs also have 2 security practices listed here. And theirs say basically the same thing as NIST, only they provide some specific examples. Like under that first one listed there, it says provide training on topics like phishing, BEC, operational security, password security, things like that. Now, the CRI Profile has 12 diagnostic statements, and they range everywhere from do cybersecurity training to training your board to training your third parties to incident response training and training on new technologies and everything in between. Every statement that they have on training is in their Tier 4 baseline, except for one about training on staff forensics experts. So there's a lot to unpack here in the CRI Profile for training. On one hand, it's very clear, and on the other, it's a pretty steep barrier to entry, and it's clearly designed for larger organizations with lots of staff and lots of resources. The CIS controls kind of take a similar approach. They have 9 safeguards, and the CIS controls list is much more topic heavy. It's less about who needs to be trained and more about what do they need to be trained on. So you can think of it more like an expansion of the CISA CPGs. The reason I show this to you is to make the point that while cybersecurity frameworks have the same structure, the contents are different. This makes it hard to say, oh, well, if they just do security awareness training, then they're good, right? As we can see here, security awareness training means 4 different things to these 4 different groups, and that's just one topic. Let's look at another, authentication. This one actually kind of cracks me up, honestly. NIST just gets straight to the point. They have really one big authentication statement, and it says users, services, and hardware are authenticated. Period. End of story. Anything and everything related to authentication would be covered under this umbrella. Passwords, multi-factor authentication, all of it. Now, the CISA CPGs are actually a little bit more detailed. They at least have 2. The first is minimum password strength, and the second is phishing resistant MFA. So we're seeing a little bit more structure there. The CRI Profile has about 6 items on their list that have things to do with authentication that range everywhere from passwords to MFA to single sign-on to enhanced authentication requirements for, I think it's privileged users and privileged access roles to service account hardening and beyond. And then the CIS controls, again, they dive deep too. They're using words like port authentication, max failed attempts, VPN authentication, and inventory of authentication systems. So to pull from our Rocky Road comparison, there's lots of nuts and marshmallows that you really don't see in any of the other frameworks that you do get with the CIS controls. Something I do want to call out here is that CISA requires 15-character passwords, and I know it's hard to see, but CIS requires 8 or 14-character passwords depending on if MFA is involved or not. So what this tells us is that authentication is important, but not all authentication requirements are equal. One more example is encryption. A wild fun fact for you here, the NIST CSF doesn't actually use the word encryption in it at all. It does in the implementation examples, but not in the official CSF. That's because the CSF is focused on outcomes, and the outcome of encryption is that data at rest, data in transit, and data in use are protected. Encryption is, of course, a great idea, and it's an excellent way to achieve those things, but encryption itself isn't the goal. Security is, and I think that's really what NIST is getting at here. CISA is a little bit more specific in recommending strong and agile encryption. Something fun about CISA's encryption requirement is that it encourages you to think about post-quantum cryptography. So if that's not on your roadmap, it's time to start picking out your car playlist because we're going to get there fast. The CRI profile, again, has a lot to say about encryption. It echoes a lot of the language from the NIST CSF, but expands on it as well, going into encrypting removable media, encrypting based on data classifications, encrypting remote access connections, and the like. And again, the CIS controls kind of bring their own special flavor. They talk about things like Apple file vaults or open secure shell or storage layer encryption, encrypting recovery data. So what I hope this shows you is that, again, encryption is important, but not all encryption requirements are equal. This actually provides a good lesson that I want to mention right here as well. If you'll let me get mathy for a second, overlap is not equal. So when people ask, can you copy my answers from one assessment to the other? It does make me a little bit sad on the inside because sadly, it's never that simple. Comparing frameworks is like comparing apples and oranges, right? It's all fruit, but the insides are different. So using that password example from a minute ago, some frameworks require 15 characters, some require 8 characters, some require 14 characters, some have no character requirement at all. And just because you achieve one or more of those password requirements does not mean you achieve all of them. Of course, we can use this information to inform our decisions, and we can connect and learn from related ideas. We like to call these mappings or crosswalks, but we cannot presume that just because we align with one thing, that we align with all the things. And I hope that this is something you're able to take with you the next time you're going to complete a cybersecurity assessment. Which feels like a good time to ask another poll question, one that I know a lot of people are curious about, myself included. And that is, when do you plan to transition to another framework? Our answer options here are going to be, we've already switched to another framework. We plan to switch before the August sunset date. We're staying with the CAT for one more year and we'll switch next year. And we're planning to continue using the CAT beyond next year. So I'll give you all just a few seconds to respond here. This is actually going to address one of the questions we got earlier, which was a question about, do we have to switch before the August sunset date, or can we stay with it for one more year? We're seeing a wide variety of options. We're seeing a wide variety of answers. So I'm going to close that poll and share those results with you here. So 11% say we've already switched to another framework, 43% say we plan to switch before the August sunset date, 26% say we're keeping the CAT for one more year. Nobody's planning to keep using it after next year though, so that's really interesting. And about 20% said, I don't know. So thank you for sharing. I think that is very honest and very accurate for what we're seeing. Yeah. It's very true for how the industry is feeling right now. A lot of people are currently exploring and trying to figure out what can we do. So thank you guys for sharing that. I hope that helped answer your question. It may not have provided a direct answer, but people are still deciding about what to do with the CAT. But we are seeing some people plan to keep the CAT for one more year and then switch next year. The key takeaway that I want to leave with you from this section is this: just because a framework has a similar structure or a similar goal to another one does not mean it has identical controls or requirements. So that's just something to be mindful of when you are picking a framework. And let's see here. Do I want to take a few more questions?
Sure.
All right. I'm going to take a questions break here. I am curious of those who switched to what did they switch? I think that kind of goes back to the first poll question we asked today, was which ones are you guys considering? So 75% said NIST CSF, and then about 25, 25, and 25 said the other three frameworks. So I think that that's where people are sitting right now. What is the reason why NIST requirements are so much shorter compared to the others? Does this make NIST CSF less useful? Oh, good question, yeah. Shane. Do you have a thought on that?
You go, and I might jump in.
Okay, sounds great. So the NIST CSF requirements are really focused on the goal of security. They want to focus on the outcome. They want to focus on what are the results here. And so I don't think I'd call them shorter. I think they're just different. And we'll explain more on that in just a little bit, because you can't just count on shortness to be be the result there. I think the implementation examples help paint that picture of why they are shorter, because their statements are very broad. They're painting a broad picture for you of security, and then it's ultimately up to you to decide how are you going to achieve this for your organization. So I think that is making it not less useful, but more flexible for you.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add?
Yeah, and I also think it's since the CSF isn't a specific industry that it's targeting, it's trying to broaden like who can use it and who has access to it. And so I think that's why it feels like it's supposed to be kind of this broader concept to fit multiple industries or multiple organizations because of what it's bringing from the framework.
Absolutely. Good point, Savannah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One person asked, you mentioned that the CSF is outcome focused. How would you characterize the other frameworks? So I would say there's actually some specific terms that they use. Yeah. So the CRI Profile uses the term diagnostic statements. Mm-hmm. The CIS Controls, I believe they're called safeguards. So yes. That kind of gives a more technical control feel. And I don't actually remember what the CISA CPGs are called.
We're about to cover it. I think they're security, no, not outcomes, because that's
practices, security practices. You're right. So they kind of each have their own flavor there, and we will be diving more into that in just a little bit. So stay tuned. All right. That's a good question. Which framework do you think best tracks your security maturity as it improves? Do you have a preference on that?
I think that's what the CIS controls are about, especially whenever, and I guess the CRI profile does cover that too, because the maturity level is based on like what we called those implementation groups earlier for the CIS controls, and then what we have for the CRI profile, the tiers. And so really, once you have established like your goals or what your security practices are, you really could start with that baseline, that lower level maturity level for implementation groups. It's IG1, and then as your resources and your risks grow, then you start applying those other controls.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. And I will chime in there too and say, I think all of them can also track your maturity as you improve. And we're going to talk about that and how in just a second. Yeah. So let's keep going.
Okay. What is the best cybersecurity framework? If you have an answer to that, you can drop it in the chat if you like. But my answer is, honestly, it depends. The right framework is the one that helps you meet your goals, manage your risk, and actually works for your organization. Sounds simple, but there's a little more to it. So let's talk about how to choose the one that fits. There's no one size fits all when it comes to cybersecurity frameworks. What works great for one institution might be way too much or not nearly enough for another. For community financial institutions, the best choice is usually something that checks a few practical boxes, like it matches your size and complexity, it's easy to understand, easy to implement, cost-friendly, it's familiar to stakeholders, and it's easy to report on. The goal is to find a framework that fits your institution, not the other way around. So let's take a closer look at each of these factors and why they matter. Let's kick off with something that's not only practical, but regulatory. When we talk about choosing the best cybersecurity framework, we can't ignore size and complexity. Why? Because regulators don't expect a one-size-fits-all cybersecurity program. They expect a risk-based approach, and the size and complexity of your institution is a key part of that risk equation. A $1 million credit union with 5 employees won't be held to the same standards as a $10 billion regional bank with dozens of business lines. Your cybersecurity expectations should scale with your operational footprint, technology usage, and data sensitivity. Now that we've covered right sizing your framework, let's talk about understanding it, because even if a framework is technically the best, it's not much use if no one at your institution can make sense of it. Here's what makes a framework truly easy to understand. It needs to have clear language. Say goodbye to jargon and acronyms. Frameworks like the CISA Cybersecurity Performance Goals are written in plain English, so they're easy to digest even for the non-technical folk. They should have actionable steps. Good frameworks go beyond concepts and actually tell you what to do. Like the CIS controls, for example, offer highly prescriptive steps like enforce 14-character passwords instead of just saying secure your user accounts. They also offer a prioritized structure. Good frameworks help you focus on what matters most first. Whether it's starting with the basics or working through tiers, a clear structure keeps things manageable and impactful. So if your team can look at a control and not only understand what it's saying, but also why it matters, you're in a really good place. That kind of clarity reduces frustration and increases buy-in across the organization. Okay. Understanding is one thing, doing is another. It's kind of like Call of Duty. I might know the game mechanics, but the second I drop in, I'm running in the wrong direction, accidentally throwing a grenade at myself and getting eliminated before I can even grasp what's happening. I get anxiety just talking about it. But so the same goes for cybersecurity frameworks. Some may seem straightforward on paper, but require a ton of effort to put into practice. So what makes a framework easy to implement? Keep in mind, the more content a framework includes, the more resources it will take to complete and maintain. Our visual shows a progression from lightweight to heavyweight cybersecurity frameworks. CISA CPGs are like resistance bands, while the CRI Profile is a full-on powerlifting session. The CISA CPGs has 38 security practices. They are security practices. We have the NIST CSF that has 106 outcomes. The CIS controls have up to 153 safeguards, and the CRI profile have up to 318 diagnostic statements. So I just wanted to note here, the CIS controls and the CRI profile both feature that target maturity levels. This is what we were talking about with the implementation groups for the CIS controls and the tiers for the CRI profile. At the lowest level of maturity, the CIS controls has 56 safeguards and the CRI profile have 208 diagnostic statements. Longer frameworks aren't bad, but they do require more people, time, and structure. All right, flexibility matters because cybersecurity isn't a simple yes or no checklist. Instead of forcing you into a rigid pass-fail structure, most frameworks often offer more nuanced options so you can show progress, make room for context, and still keep moving forward. So for example, the CISA CPGs let you respond with options like implemented, in progress, scoped, or not started. The CRI profile offers anywhere from 6 to 9 response options, depending on which part of the documentation you're reading, including things like partial, yes, risk-based, and even I don't know. The CIS controls and the NIST CSF don't come with a built-in response type, but the good news is you can customize them. At Tandem, we like to use a simple response scale like you see here. Bottom line, choose a framework you can actually move forward with. Don't set yourself up for a framework that collects dust because it's too complex to get off the ground. Okay, so talking about a cost-friendly framework. Every framework may be free to download, but that doesn't mean it's free to use. There are 3 main cost buckets to consider. First, we have the control cost bucket. Some frameworks are more prescriptive, which can get pricey. If the framework says implement single sign-on, DLP tools, and allow listing, you may be signing up for new tech or service costs. Next, we have the time cost bucket. A short assessment might take a week. A lengthy technical framework might take months. Also consider how often you'll need to revisit and update it. And lastly, we have the vendor cost bucket. Will you need software, auditors, or consultants to help you implement the framework? Public frameworks like NIST and CISA are easier for vendors to support because they're open and accessible. The FFIEC calls these public domain frameworks. On the other hand, proprietary frameworks developed by private companies or nonprofits can come with licensing restrictions that make outside support a bit trickier. Now, on the topic of vendors, we have another poll question.
All right, let me get that pulled up here.
Okay, our question, will a vendor be helping you with your cybersecurity assessments? You can select all that apply here, and the answer choices are, yes, we'd like our MSP to help us complete it. Yes, we'd like our IT auditors to audit against it. Yes, we'd like our consultants to base our program on it. No, we're doing it ourselves, or NA, and I don't know.
All right, we've got about 40% voted, so we will let people keep answering that. And I just want to say, I'm seeing a lot of questions coming through about what framework do you recommend for very specific criteria here. Stay tuned. We have something for you at the end of the session, so give us just a few minutes and we'll get there. All right, and I'm going to close those results and share it with you. 51% said no, we are doing this ourselves. 24% said yes, we'd like our IT auditors to audit against it. 20% said we'd like our MSP to help. 14% said consultants, and 13% said not applicable or I don't know. So yeah, about lots of diversity there. So that's interesting to see.
All right. So on to familiar to stakeholders. So let's say you pick a brilliant cybersecurity framework, something that checks every box and fits your institution perfectly. But here's the catch. If your board, your examiner, or your auditor has never heard of it, get ready to spend a lot of time explaining what it is and why you chose it. When we talk about a framework being familiar to stakeholders, we're not just talking about IT. We mean everyone involved. Your IT team who needs to implement it, your senior leadership and board who need to understand it at a high level, your external auditors and regulators who will expect to see how you're managing risk, and even your vendors and consultants who may support you through the process. Choosing a well-known framework helps smooth communication, reduce confusion, and makes reporting a whole lot easier. Now that we know who needs to be familiar with the framework, let's talk about which frameworks you're actually most likely to recognize. In our 2024 State of Cybersecurity report, we asked community financial institutions which frameworks they've adopted. Here's what we found. Starting with the NIST CSF, we have 70% adoption rate. The CIS Controls have 24%. The CISA CPGs at 9% and growing steadily. And the CRI Profile, it's not pictured on here, but it did have a low adoption rate so far. And yes, the CAT was still the most popular overall when we ran this survey. But now that the FFIEC has announced it's sunsetting the tool, we're expecting a steep drop-off in usage. The key here is that the more familiar a framework is, the smoother the adoption process. Less time spent explaining means more time strengthening your security program. You can choose any framework, but if it's not a well-known one, be ready to justify your decision. Now let's talk about reporting, because let's be honest, half of the battle with cybersecurity frameworks is not doing the work, it's showing your work. This is where the right reporting tools really come in handy. Frameworks give you the structure, but it's your tools that help you turn all that work into something you can actually share without spending hours in spreadsheets. Here are a few helpful features to look for when looking for a software or service to help. Do they have summary reports? These are quick overviews of your progress. They could have executive level data, so executives can quickly see what's working and what needs attention. And do they provide charts and graphs? Because visuals speak louder than bullet points. With something like Tandem, reporting becomes simple. You can track your progress, pull clean reports, and share updates without having to build everything from scratch. So our key takeaway, the best framework is the one that fits. Choose what works for your team, your size, and your goals, and makes your life a little easier along the way. And then we'll take a minute to look at some questions.
We are actually going to hold off on questions for now, just because we are about out of time.
Okay, so if you're still wondering about which framework you should choose, stick with us till the end, and we're going to have something special for you.
All right. So if you're looking at all of this and wondering, how on earth am I supposed to manage my cybersecurity assessments? Wonder no more, my friend. I am so excited to share with you some of the exciting things happening with Tandem Cybersecurity Assessment. So for those of you who aren't familiar with our story, we created this product 10 years ago to help banks complete the FFIEC CAT. It is our most popular Tandem product to date. We offer a free version that allows you to complete the assessment and get some helpful reports. And then we offer a pro version that provides some additional features. On January 2nd of this year, we announced the early release of features for our product that let us support other frameworks, including the NIST CSF, the CPGs, and others. So I want to take just a few minutes here to show you the changes we've made and what that looks like. So let me pull up Tandem here. And we don't want our session to expire. We want to show people what it looks like. So this is Tandem Cybersecurity Assessment. I'm going to start here at the global level and show you the frameworks page. Here you can see our list of frameworks that we do support now, either by having templates or by having bulk import options. So again, some of those proprietary frameworks we cannot provide for you, but we do create a way for you to import your own template into the software. So if you wanted to use the CIS controls, you can still use Tandem for that, but it has to be your own. So for today, I'm going to go ahead and open up my NIST Cybersecurity Framework here. And first, I just want to show you this cool dashboard. It's basically a snapshot of your entire cybersecurity assessment. So you have the ability to see where you are and where you're going and what gaps you might have that might be prohibiting you from getting there. The controls assessment page is where all the magic happens. So this is similar to that maturity section in the CAT, if you were familiar with that. Under each of these sections, you're going to be able to answer those statements, or those outcomes, I should say. And you're going to be able to identify what is the current status of this control and what is the target status. So where are we now and where do we want to be? So for example, if I said I haven't implemented this one, but I want to, there's going to be some cool reporting I can pull on that later. So that's another great way to be able to measure your maturity in your controls. Each of these controls has a description where we provide details like the implementation examples. You can add comments to explain your thoughts, assign responsibility, upload file attachments with the Pro version. And my personal favorite feature is this mappings feature. So you remember earlier when I was talking about how overlap is not equal? That is true, but we can still use that data to inform our decisions. So here you can see the Cybersecurity Assessment Tool, and these are the items that are mapped to the NIST CSF. So you can use that information to decide how to answer this one. After you finish your assessment, you can set up tasks to serve as reminders. So if you want to ping one of your friends, you can ask them to sign into Tandem and check things out. You can also review those helpful reports. So here is my personal favorite report. It's the control status report. It's going to show you that snapshot view of where your controls are at. We also have download documents coming soon. So this is still early release, and I'm actually showing you a feature that you guys don't have access to just yet, but you will soon. So stay tuned with us. But you can create custom documents to export your information in a variety of formats. You get to pick and choose what sections you want to have included, and you can export it in Word document or PDF format. So here's just a sample of what that document could look like depending on how you create it. And of course, the showstopper, one of the great benefits of using a product like Tandem is that we can offer features like peer analysis, where you can compare your results with other financial institutions using Tandem. So here we've got your status along with your control status for your peers. This is optional, this is anonymous, but it provides you such good data that you can see. How do we measure up? You can look at this on the assessment by assessment basis, or if you want to get really fancy, you can go over here to the global tab and see global peer analysis data. You can see exactly what are the most popular frameworks that are being used right now, how many frameworks do people use, and what are people creating and completing in the software. If I change this date to January 1st of this year, I'm going to apply that. You'll be able to see that the NIST CSF is actually the most frequently created and completed assessment type in Tandem this year, aside from the FFIEC CAT. So that's really exciting to see. And I just want to say, I am super proud of this product. Our team has been working really hard to make these changes and get it ready for you. So I'm going to go back over to the slides and tell you about how you can learn more. We have two great ways for you to get started with Tandem Cybersecurity Assessment today. The first way is to sign up for free. Yes, you heard that right. As we've done for the last 10 years, Tandem is excited to continue providing free cybersecurity assessment software for financial institutions. So with this free version, you can enable whatever frameworks you want, start creating cybersecurity assessments, comparing results with your peers, and then some. So if you do not currently subscribe to Tandem Cybersecurity Assessment, you can sign up right now, like literally right now, at tandem.app/cybersecurity, and our amazing support team will get your account set up in the next couple business days. If you are ready, if you know you are ready to take your cybersecurity assessment experience to the next level, now is also the perfect time to upgrade to Pro. With Cybersecurity Assessment Pro, you will get access to tons of features that make your job easier, like copying previous assessments, uploading file attachments, a variety of access roles, and so much more. So if that wasn't great enough news, I will do you one better. If you request a quote on the end of session survey and you sign that quote before May 1st, you will get a special discount on your pricing. So if you've been thinking about upgrading or you think you might want to upgrade in the near future, now is the best time to do it. The whole reason Tandem gets to provide free software and webinars like these is because of our amazing subscribers. So if you aren't part of the Tandem community, we would love for you to join us in one of these two ways, and we'll hope to see you around. But wait, there's still more. Savannah, one last announcement from you.
Yes. Okay. So we want to talk to you guys about the special resource that we've just been referring to over and over again in this session. You know those BuzzFeed quizzes, like which Disney princess are you? And if you've answered that question before, please let me know which Disney princess you are. But well, we made our own version, but instead of a tiara, you get a cybersecurity framework. It's a 13-question quiz that looks at your organization's size, complexity, risk, and preferences. At the end, you'll get a ranked list of 4 frameworks, plus a little breakdown of how you answered, how your answers shape the results. We'll drop the link in the chat, our team will, and we'll also have the link on the slide. So if you want to check it out later, you can. It's quick, it's helpful, and yes, just a little bit of fun.
Okay. All right, we are at time, and so we're getting so many questions coming through here. I'm going to go ahead and make the call and say, if you guys need to drop off, you are welcome to. But we are going to stay on the call for just a few more minutes and take a look at some of your questions. So thank you guys so much for being here. I'm going to move to that last slide so you can see our contact info and those links. But let's go ahead and see what we've got coming through here. Oh my goodness, you guys, this is wild. So many questions coming through. Again, the slides we will be sending after the session via email, so you are welcome to keep an eye on your inbox. We will send those out to you shortly. Is there a recording of this event? Yes, we did record this session, so stay tuned. We will be sending that out along with the slides. How do I get the free app? You can sign up for Tandem Cybersecurity Assessment free on our website. We've got the link on this slide here, tandem.app/cybersecurity. So go there. There's a button that says Get Free Version, and so you can go ahead and fill that out and sign up on our site. Questions about cost. You can, if you request a quote on our end of session survey, our account reps will send you a quote with pricing for Cybersecurity Pro. So stay tuned for that. Any you want to take here?
I'm looking through it. Sorry, my eyes are a little squinty.
That's actually a good one. How do I know if I have Pro or free? Do you want to take that?
So if you have the free version, if you just go to like log into Tandem and go open up the product, you're gonna see like a banner that says, do you want to subscribe to Cybersecurity Pro? That's like the first indicator there. You'll see banners, you'll see kind of like a what are they, like kind of like pop-ups, not pop-ups, but a banner that just indicates that, hey, you can sign up for the Pro product. So make sure you look at that.
Yeah, I think there's also a menu item that says Pro version. So if you see it say Pro version, you've got the free version. If you don't, then you're already subscribed to Pro. So thank you. Let's see, I'm going to clear out a few of these because you guys are submitting so many great questions and feedback. I appreciate that. Do you want to take that one from Anne?
Oh yeah, so what framework is available for free? So all of the frameworks that you saw there is available on the free for cybersecurity assessment free. I have to get used to saying cybersecurity assessment instead of cybersecurity assessment tool or, but yes, those frameworks that you saw that were listed in the product are available for free.
I love that. Thank you, Savannah. How many customers do you have that would be included in the peer reports? So that's actually a good question. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but it would include everybody that's opted into our peer analysis, and they are actively creating and completing peer or cybersecurity assessments in Tandem. And that number is going to change depending on the filters that you have set. So if we go back to Tandem and look here, my data set for this year has 301 right now. So based on my filters and what we're looking at. So that is a great question. Thank you. That's a good one. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so in Tandem, will we have access to all of the frameworks? Can we start one?
So I think,
yes, yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. Yes. So you'll be able to have access to all of those frameworks. You can start one at any point. You don't have to delete one and try to restart one. You can restart, or you can start on however many frameworks that you want to in Tandem.
All right, great question. We've got a question that says, has anyone gone through an exam using Tandem assessment, and what did the regulator say? I have to say, Tandem has been around for over 10 years now. So we have had examiners looking at our cybersecurity assessment tool product for those 10 years, and thousands of financial institutions using it over those 10 years. So examiners are very happy in our experience with the reports and the download documents. If you guys have a personal exam story that you have and you want to share, we'd love to hear it. So feel free to drop us a note. But in our experience, they've been very happy with that. Thank you. That's a great question. Do you offer the fantastic board report that you currently offer for the CAT for the other frameworks yet? If not, when do you expect to be able to offer them?
It's not there. It's not available yet, but it will be soon. We do have our roadmap up on the knowledge base, in our knowledge base, and so you could keep track of it there. But it's coming soon.
Yes. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. All right. Is there a framework that's best for financial institutions? Any of the above, and check out that quiz, tandem.app/quiz, if you want to see which one might be a good fit for you. All right, going to clear out a few of these that we've answered so far. How do we get access to these frameworks so we can try them? Yes, again, tandem.apps/cybersecurity. We would love for you to try them out. Other frameworks. Is Tandem considering adding other frameworks? Yes, we are. So that list is continually growing. Just last week, we rolled out, I believe it was the exam program frameworks. So that was the NCUA ISE, the FDIC Intrex program, and the OCC Cybersecurity Supervision Work Program, along with the CISA Ransomware Readiness Assessment. So we are adding frameworks continually. So if you have a framework you'd like us to add, feel free to shoot us a message. We'd love to see what your suggestions are. Are there more frameworks than there are ice cream flavors? It's a good question.
I guess it depends on the brand, right?
It depends, yeah. That's a really good question. All right. Okay, I think we are getting to the end of it. So if you guys have other questions, feel free to send those in to us. We've got our email addresses listed on this final slide. So I will say thank you so much. And Savannah, is there anything that you want to add?
No, this was great. We'll go ahead and close out. And I was so excited to be here with you guys today. And we'll see you guys next time. I hope you guys have a great day.
All right, bye.